Welcome. This is Jason Clemmons, Doctor of Chiropractic at the Rock Health and Wellness Center, and this is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. It is Wednesday, February 7th, and we're coming to you right here from the Rock Health and Wellness Center studios live on Facebook, YouTube, and X. And we're coming to you live on 98.7 Walk by Faith Radio and 1420 AM Lubbock Christian Nation. I hope you guys have had a fantastic day. We have at the Rock. We have had really an amazing day. Some really interesting cases of new patients. Some really good stories. Some things that I'm really excited about having the opportunity to work with. Some things that we've almost never seen here in the office before. So it was quite the day in the office. I'm really blessed to have had the experience that I've had and had the people that I get to work with today, and some of the new patients that we've had. Three of them today were just. It was really good. It was really good to get those people in here and give them some hope, and get to work on them, and so. I'm not going to get too deep into all the things that went along with that, but I can just say that it's been a very inspiring day for me, very humbling day for me, very competitive day for me here at the Rock. So hope you guys have had just as awesome of a day as we have, and we've been at it, and we've had some good shows this week. We took health to church on Monday, and then last night we got into our standard process stuff and a little bit about what we're going to talk about tonight with Blitzed. And so I've been it's been a long time since I've been really as excited about a book as the Master and His Emissary book, obviously with the brain and all that sort of thing. But this book ties in. Sometimes you just study, and then every once in a while things come along. And if you just keep working at it and you keep working at it, things come along and kind of fit in, like they just kind of start to fit together, and you get to see a bigger picture about what's going on in life. And yesterday, with this book, it just was one of those puzzle pieces that it's kind of been missed, and boy, it explains a lot. And I'm gonna try as hard as I can to try to tie it in a way that makes any sense, and in a way that maybe you can see it and you can say, okay, wow, I didn't know that was a thing, and thanks for sharing that. That's what I'm hoping by getting into tonight. So I just want to get right with it because we got a lot of stuff to cover. And so it's our book review night. Wednesday night's our book review night. And the book that we're going to review tonight, it's an international bestseller. It's by Norman Ohler, Ohler. And Norman Ohler is a German New York Times best-selling author, novelist, and screenwriter, best known for his book Blitzed, Drugs in Nazi Germany, which has been published in over 30 languages. And so I haven't done a lot of in-depth research into the validity of the book. As far as I can tell, it's a valid book. It's cited. It's got tons of citations in the back to explain exactly the bibliography in this. Is multiple pages long, and it has in one part of it there's 191 citations. There's 18 something citations in the next part of the chapter. It's full of citations. 90. I don't know how many total citations there are here. So I have a feeling that this guy did his work, and I mean the bibliography goes from page 284, and it's a small book. I understand that, but all the way through 346. So from 284 to 346, I mean, it's just all citations. So I got a feeling that there's some validity to this book. And it's called Blitzed by Norman Ohler, Drugs in Nazi Germany. And you're going to think to yourself, first of all, it's just a cool story. Like it really is. But last night I mentioned it in the first half of the show, and why I think this is such a cool story. And and why you're going to think, if you put it together the way that I put it together, you'll start to see some stuff, and it'll give you a better understanding of kind of how to navigate with your own health. And that's really what we're talking about. Because last night I referenced this this letter, this research done by Abraham Flexner, and we're going to get into that tonight, and that's how we're going to tie Blitz together. And I really think that you're going to think it's interesting. So let's get after it. Let's see, and then see if I can make it work. So it starts off in chapter 1, and it says, National Socialism was toxic in the truest sense of the word. It gave the world a chemical legacy that still affects us today, a poison that refuses to disappear. On one hand, Nazis presented themselves as clean-cut and enforced a strict ideological underpinning anti-drug policy with propagandist pomp and draconian punishment. In spite of this, particularly potent and perfidious substance became a popular product under Hitler. This drug carved out a great career for itself all over the German Reich and later the occupied countries of Europe. Under the trademark Pervitin, Pervitin is the drug, Pervitin. This little pill became accepted, Volksdrog, I don't know how you say that, the people's drug, and was on sale in every chemist's shop. It wasn't until 1939 that its use was restricted by making Pervitin prescription only, and the pill was not subjected to regulation until the Reich Opium Law of 1941. The active ingredient is methamphetamine. Methamphetamine, right? Methamphetamine that kills people every single day. Methamphetamine that gets people hooked and ruins their lives. I've got close friends that I believe have died from using these opioid type medications that got mixed up with fentanyl that's killing people. Like it's a big deal. It's a really big deal, and it all started it all started in Germany, and hardly anyone knows about its rise in Nazi Germany. That's what he says right here in the book. And he goes to Germany, and he goes to these labs, and he goes to and from these people, and it started way back in the day, and so the Timler factory. So he is in Berlin. I take a suburban train southeast to the edge of Berlin in order to find remnants of the Timler factory, Temmler. I have to get out at Aldershof. I'm not going to try to read all these German names because I will definitely mess them all up. But it's Germany's most modern technological park. Avoiding the campus, I strike off across an urban no man's land, skirting dilapidated factory buildings and passing through a wilderness of crumbling brick and rusty steel. And then he finds the Timler factory, moved there in 1933. Only 1 year later that Albert Mendel, the Jewish co-owner of the Timhoff chemical factory, was excoriated by the racist laws of the regime, and Timler took over his share and quickly expanded the business. These were good times for German chemical industry, and pharmaceutical development boomed. Research was tirelessly conducted on new pioneering substances that would ease the pain of modern humanity or sedate its troubles. Many of the resulting pharmacological innovations shaped the way we consume medicine today. So these guys got into it, and it says here that at one point, millions of Pervitin pills a week were being pressed. And it moves along, it shows some pictures, and then it gets into exactly when all this stuff started happening. And it says to understand the historical relevance of methamphetamine and other substances to Nazi state, we must go back before the beginning of the Third Reich. The development of modern societies is bound as tightly with the creation and distribution of drugs as the economy is with advances in technology. That's a massive statement right there. The development of modern societies is bound as tightly with the creation and distribution of drugs as the economy is with advances in technology. In 1805, Goethe wrote Faust in classic Weimar. I don't know how you say this stuff. And poetic means perfect. One of the thesis that the genesis of man itself drug induced. I changed my brain, therefore I am. At the same time, a rather less glamorous town of Paderborn in Westphalia, the pharmaceutical assistant Friedrich Wilhelm Sertner performed experiments with opium poppies whose thickened sap anesthetized pain for more effectively than anything else. Goethe wanted to explore through artistic and dramatic channels what it is that holds the core of the world together. Sertner, on the other hand, wanted to solve a major problem, a millennium-old problem which has plagued our species to a parallel degree. So it was a concrete challenge for the brilliant 21-year-old chemist, depending on the conditions they are grown in. The active ingredient in opium poppies is pressed in variant concentrations. And so it goes on to talk about exactly what it does and how opium kills the pain. Now, I understand that this was a tough time. It was a tough time on Earth. It was a tough time to be a human being. There was lots of pain. There was very little sanitation. There was very little clean food and water. There was very little understanding about how to help people be better and all this sort of thing. So you can imagine how someone that came along and decided that, hey, we can take away some pain might be somewhat popular. And then it just keeps going to in Dartmouth, the owner of Engel Apotheke, Emanuel Merck, stood out as a pioneer of his development. In 1827, he set out his business model of supplying alkaloids and other medication in unvarying quality. This was the birth of not only the Merck Company, which still thrives today, but one of the modern pharmaceutical industries as a whole. When injections were invented in 1850, there was no stopping the victory parade of morphine. The painkiller was used in the American Civil War, in the Franco-Prussian War, and so morphine fixes were doing the rounds as normal procedure. The change was crucial. The pain of even seriously injured soldiers could now be kept within bounds. This made a different scale of war possible. Fighters who would before have been ruled out for a long time by an injury were soon coddled back to health and thrust into the front line once again. So here we go. This is 1827. This is Merck. And we're talking about in the 1800s and into the 1900s. With morphine, known as morphium, the development of pain relief and anesthesia reached a crucial climax, both in the army and in civil society. From workers to the noblemen, the supposed panacea took the world by storm. From Europe via Asia and all the way to America, in drugstores across the USA, 2 active ingredients were available without prescription. Fluids containing morphine calmed people down, while drinks containing cocaine, such as in the early days of Vin Marinini, a Bordeaux containing cola extract, and even Coca-Cola were used to counter low moods and problems. So here we go. So we're talking about all this stuff. We're talking about the first designer drug, heroin. We're talking about heroin is a fine business, the directors of Bayer announced proudly and advertised the substance as a remedy for headaches, for general indisposition, as a cough syrup for children. It was even recommended to babies for colic and sleeping problems. Business wasn't just booming for Bayer. In the last third of the 19th century, several new pharmaceutical hotspots developed along the Rhine. Unlike other, more traditional industries, the chemical industry didn't require as much term of overheads to get business going, only needed relatively little equipment and raw material. So here they go. The Germans created this whole thing, and they became the global dealer of drugs. They were selling it all over the place. They were handling. They were the number one maker of cocaine. They bought cocaine from Peru at unbelievable levels. Between 1925 and 1930, 91 tons of morphine were produced, 40% of global production. Under the obligation of the Versailles Treaty, Germans reluctantly signed the League of Nations International Opium Convention in 1925 that regulated the trade. So the the birth the birth of the birth of pharmaceuticals, I'm sure it happened before that, but where it took off and it really made a big deal and it really became a big part of what was going on in life. And the story goes on and to tell, it just keeps going, and it tells about the history of things, and it tells Hitler's part in it, and then it starts to get into how they did a study, and I think I mentioned this last night, but they studied because they had this Pervitin, and they were trying to see what it did to people, and did it cause harm, and was there any advantage to having it? So they took two separate groups, and a bunch of young kids, college kids or whatever, and they kept them up all night long doing math problems. They had to read and do math problems all night long. And they gave one set of the kids the Pervitin, and they gave the other kids didn't get anything. And it says in the book, but by the time the morning came, the kids that didn't get anything were asleep with their heads down on their desk. And the Pervitin group was still going. Like they were rocking. They were rocking it. They didn't slow down one bit. They just kept going right through the night. And then they went back and looked at their test scores. And when they looked at their test scores, they found out that didn't help them at all. The ones that took the drug and the ones that didn't take the drug didn't have any difference in their test scores. But the ones that took the drug could stay up all night long, and they could keep going and keep going and keep going. And so they thought to themselves, hey, this would be a really good thing for military people. Like, that's what we need. We need our people in the military to have Pervitin. And that's exactly what they did. They gave Pervitin to everyone in the military. And they were able to do some amazing fighting in the military. And they talked about it. They talked about how everyone had two pills in their pocket all the time. And when they got ready to do some of their crazy fighting that they had done, that when they got ready to invade France, one of the things they knew that they couldn't slow down, they were going to have to go full speed all the way through. And so all of the German fighters were on Pervitin. The German generals were on Pervitin. Hitler was taking Pervitin. Like, all those guys were taking this drug as a stimulant, because what did it do? It ramped up epinephrine and dopamine in the brain. Epinephrine for the right hemisphere, dopamine for the left hemisphere, took the whole brain up in its function. And if you're going to be fired up like that, why would you sleep? Like, you're not going to sleep. So they were able to do some things that they could make their fighters fight like no one ever fought before. And they fought the whole entire time. And what the book goes on, and the book talks about, one of the things that the book is, it tells the story of Theodore Morell. It says the word Jew was smeared on the plaque of a doctor's surgery on Bayernstrasse in Berlin's Charlottenburg district one night in 1933. The name of the doctor, a specialist in dermatological and sexual transmitted diseases, was illegible. Only the opening hours could still be clearly seen. Weekdays 11 to 1 and 5 to 7, apart from Saturday afternoon. The overweight, bald Dr. Theodore Morell reacted to the attack in a way that was typical, as it was wretched. He quickly joined the Nazi Party to diffuse future hostilities of that kind. Morell was not a Jew, and the SA had strongly suspected him of being one because of his dark complexion. After he had registered as a party member, Morell became even more successful. It expanded and moved into the lavish rooms of the 19th century building on the corner of something and something. You joined your flourish, and was a lesson Morell would never forget. You joined, you flourish. That was a lesson he'd never forget. right up until the end. The fat man from Hessen hadn't the slightest interest in politics. The satisfaction that made his life worthwhile came when a patient felt better after treatment, obediently paid the fee, and came back as soon as possible. Morrell had developed strategies over the years that gave him an advantage over other doctors with whom he vied for well-to-do clients. His smart private practice was soon seen as one of the most profitable in the area, equipped with the most up-to-date technology, all originally bought with the fortune of his wife, Hanny. Over time, it had the whole of high society beating a path to the door of Morrell, a former ship's doctor in the tropics, whether it was the boxer Max Schmeling, various counts and ambassadors, successful athletes, business magnates, high-powered scientists, politicians, half of the film world, everyone made their pilgrimage to Dr. Morrell, who specialized in a new kind of treatment, or as some mocking tongues had it, in a treatment of non-existent illnesses. There was one field in which his modest and egocentric doctor was considered a pioneer: vitamins. How about that? He started off with vitamins, he says. Little was known at the time about these invisible helpers, which the body itself can't produce, but which was urgently needed for certain metabolic processes. Injected directly into the blood, vitamin supplements worked wonders in cases of undernourishment. This was precisely Morrell's strategy for keeping his patients interested, and if vitamins weren't enough, he definitely added a circulatory stimulant to the injection mixture. For males, he might include some testosterone with an anabolic effect for muscle building and potency. For women's, an extract of nightshades as an energy supplement, and for hypnotically beautiful eyes. If a melancholy theatrical actress came to see him to get rid of stage fright before her premiere, Morrell wouldn't hesitate for a moment, but would reach into his hairy hands for a syringe. He was said to be absolute master of injection needles, and there were even rumors that it was impossible to feel the prick as his needle went in spite of the size of that. And his reputation went beyond the boundaries of the city, and even in the spring of 1936, his phone rang in the consulting room, even though he had categorically forbidden his nurses to disturb him during surgery. But this was no ordinary phone call. It was from the Brown House, party headquarters in Munich, a certain swab on the line introducing himself as Hitler's adjutant, of informing him that Heinrich Hoffmann, the official Reich photographer, was suffering from a delicate illness. So there he goes. He's set up his practice. He's trying to help people. He's doing what medical doctors do. This is in 1936. Now he gets a phone call from Hitler, and he's now all of a sudden he becomes Hitler's doctor. And he goes and then the rest of the book talks about Hitler and his doctor. It talks about what Pervitin is. It talks about how he had Hitler on drugs, and the whole Third Reich was on drugs, and Blitzkrieg, the whole thing. They were all on this methamphetamine, and it became this huge thing, right? And it became, but I wanted the point that has me so excited about this thing, and I just was trying to give you a little history about the whole thing. But the point that makes me so excited about it is the 1800s, where it started with these doctors, with Merck Pharmaceutical, and them being Germany working itself into being the drug capital of the world, where nobody took more drugs than Germany. In Germany, they were working on things. They were working on poppy seeds. They were working on plants. They were working on morphine. They were working on opium. They were trying to figure out all this stuff. They were the leaders in the world of cocaine. They were the leaders in all of this stuff. I mean, stimulants. There's a big old article right here just about Pervitin. Like, there's an article, right? I mean, like a advertisement that goes along with that. And you're like, well, Jason, why is this so, like, why are you so excited about this? What is it about this whole thing that makes you excited? Well, you know, I think it was last week when we were doing the Take Health to Church, and we read the scripture that says, where your mind is, that's where you'll go. That's whatever you have your mind set on is what you're going to end up with, right? That's what you're going to follow. That's where you're going to go. And the rest of this book is just explaining, and it's a fascinating story. Hitler was on drugs the entire time. He was high on drugs. He was making decisions. He got a bunch of people killed. He would stop them when they were just about to win and pull them back, and then get them all confused about what was next. Like, there was just so much going on that, and the whole time he was on some sort of stimulant. He was on some sort of cocaine. He was on, like, when he was meeting with dignitaries all across the world, he was on some sort of cocaine. And because that was the culture. That was the culture that the Germans had developed. And that's what they ended up with. So they started it in the 1800s. They became the world leader in drugs. And then that was the culture that all the leaders and all the people went with, is because that's what the doctors were doing. A lot of the doctors are on drugs. And when we come back, I'm going to tie it into that Flexner report, and I'm going to show you what we deal with in the United States today. So I hope you guys will stick around. We'll be right back right after these messages. Yeah, I'm not going to I'll let you know about the rest of the book, or you can look it up, the rest of the book. But the whole time, this is talking about World War II. It's talking about all the things that were going on with Hitler. It was talking about all the drugs that he was on the entire time. It was talking about how the generals were on drugs. The Mussolini, someone from Japan, someone from, I don't know, the countries around them, like, it was all about drugs. And this Morel was right there in the middle of it the whole time. And there was a doctor propping him up. There was a doctor that was propping up Hitler the whole time. And I saw that, and I'm gonna wait till we get back on the show. But when you take the Flexner report and you break down the Flexner report and you understand the history of medicine in America, what happened, how did we get to where we are today? That's what I want. That's what I want to go with. And I had an amazing conversation with one of my ladies that works in the hospital today, and she came in and she was telling me that I said, what y'all been working on over there? And she said, well, we've been talking about how everybody turns just normal everyday events of human life into pathologies, into a crisis. You know, if you get depressed because someone in your family died, now all of a sudden you have depression, right? Or you might have had a rough time one time, and then now all of a sudden you have post-traumatic stress syndrome, and how you do all that stuff. She was telling me that they were having this conversation over in the hospital. And I was thinking to myself, that's by design. Like, how many times have you been sitting there watching TV, and all of a sudden there's a TV commercial that comes on and says, are you feeling down? Don't you think maybe you've got depression? You should ask your doctor if this drug is right for you. Okay, we're back. Hey, everybody. This is Jason Clemmons. This is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. And we're talking about the book Blitzed by Norman Ohler. And we were getting into the history of it. And we were talking about how Germany was the main area of cocaine, methamphetamines, all kinds of stimulants, opium. They were the ones that mastered it. They were the ones that got into the lab. They're the ones that figured it out. They're the ones that got it into their society. They were like the leaders of the world of it. And you might be asking yourself, Okay, what is so exciting about that? Well, let me bring you into something that I learned when I was in chiropractic school, and I learned about this article, and I talked about it last night, but I want to get into depth of it tonight because it's the beginning. It's the beginning of what we know as medicine in the United States today. And listen, first of all, I'm not talking about pharmaceuticals, whether or not you should take them or not. And I'm not talking about doctors and medicine. I'm talking about the culture of what we deal with. Because when you see it, when you finally see it, you'll be like, oh my gosh, that's exactly true. Like, wow. Okay. So Andrew Carnegie, or Carnegie, however you want to say it, we'll say Carnegie for the show because everybody usually calls him that, was the richest man in the United States in the early 1900s. And he wanted to use his money to try to make things better. So he commissioned Dr. Abraham Flexner from the Carnegie Foundation. And I'll just read part of this right here. The trustees of the Carnegie Foundation at their meeting in the November 1908 authorized a study and report upon the schools of medicine and law in the United States and appropriated the money necessary for this undertaking. The present report upon medical education, prepared under the direction of the Foundation by Mr. Abraham Flexner, is the first result of that action. No effort has been spared to procure accurate and detailed information as to the facilities, resources, and methods of instruction of the medical schools. They have not only been separately visited, but every statement made in regard to each detail has been carefully checked with the data in possession of the American Medical Association, likewise obtained by personal inspection and with the records of the Association of the American Medical Colleges, so far as its membership extends. So these guys spared no expense to go around to every medical school in the United States because they felt like that we were having a problem. Like there was too many medical schools, and they weren't very formal, and they didn't do a very good job of teaching things that was a standard. And so they decided that they should set the standard by which the American medical education was going to be set. That's kind of what they were trying to do. And it says, in making this study, the schools of all medical sects have been included. It is clear that as long as a man is to practice medicine, the public is equally concerned in his right preparation for that profession. Okay, fair enough. That's a good statement. As long as a man's going to practice medicine, the public ought to be protected against that man and at least know that that man is prepared to do his job, right? But that's a slippery slope right there, because here we go. We've got a group, the Carnegie Foundation. They're not elected by anybody. This is a rich man's game. This is a man that's the richest man in the world deciding to put a foundation together, and then now they're going to set a set of rules that all of a sudden becomes established law in the way that we should function in the United States. And it sounds reasonable, but it's like, okay, like who's the one that's making this? Whatever he called himself, allopathic, homeopath, electic, osteopath, or whatnot, it is equally clear that he should be grounded in the fundamental sciences upon which medicine rests. Now that right there sounds like it should be a sound statement, but there's a lot right there. It is equally clear that he should be grounded in the fundamental sciences upon which medicine rests. Now, who determines that? Because the osteopath was saying if you balance a fluid in the body, that you could keep a person healthy. The chiropractors were saying that if you balance the nervous system, you would keep people healthy. The homeopath said if you give something that would cause you to have a fever, but you give it in a very, very small dose, then that would be acceptable. The allopath said you had to be the opposite of, right? But now we're going to say that this is that the fundamental science upon medicine rests. So we get on this slippery slope right here. But it goes in and explains what had happened. And basically what had happened in the early 1900s is medical schools had been popping up all over the place because they were commercial. They were basically commercial businesses. They weren't medical schools, they were commercial businesses. And it talks about this. The gradual development of commercial medical school, distinctly an American product of the modern movement for the transfer of medical education to the universities' surroundings. That's what it was trying to do. Basically, what they were trying to do with this is say, hey, look, we need to get rid of these commercial medical schools that are just in it for profit, because one of the challenges that they would have is it takes a lot of money, and most of these medical schools weren't generating a lot of money, so they wouldn't have the ability to put that money into the equipment that it took to train medical doctors properly. And so that was really a challenging thing for them. But so it said the significant facts revealed by this study are these. For 25 years past, there has been an enormous overproduction of uneducated and ill-trained medical practitioners. This has been an absolute disregard of the public welfare and without any serious thought of the interest of the public. Taking the United States as a whole, physicians are 4 or 5 times as numerous in proportion to the population as in older countries like Germany. All right, there's the first reference right there. The first reference to Germany. Why would they reference that? Why would the Carnegie Foundation in the early 1900s reference Germany? What difference does it make what they're doing in Germany? How come we have to set our standard as if like the ones in Germany? Overproduction of ill-trained men is due in the main to the existence of a very large number of commercial schools, sustained in many cases by advertising methods through which a mass of unprepared youth is drawn out of industrial occupations into the study of medicine. So what was happening? These commercial schools were advertising themselves, and they were taking these kids that were in this industrial revolution and in the factories and in the cities or on the farms or all that stuff that was hard work, and they were saying, hey, look, you can come be a medical doctor if you come to our school. And they did it by advertising. So here's the second thing the significant facts revealed by the study is that a large number of commercial schools sustained in many cases by advertising methods. Okay? So the first thing is we got way more doctors than Germany, and which we now establish as the standard. And the second thing is we've got a whole bunch of these people that are just getting paid by advertising. How amazing is that? Third, until recently, the conduct of a medical school was profitable business, for the method of instructions are mainly didactic. As the need for laboratories has become more keenly felt, the expense of an efficient medical school have greatly increased. Yeah, so this was, and it says most of them have incomes below $10,000. Colleges and universities in large measure failed in the past 25 years to appreciate the great advances in medical education and an increased cost of teaching that it takes in modern lands. Number 4, the existence of many of these unnecessary and inadequate medical schools has been defended by the argument that a poor medical school is justified in the interest of the poor boy. And that's not really sincere, they say. The excuse is put forward by the poor boy. In reality, the argument is on behalf of the poor medical school. So the medical school was poor. They didn't want to put the money into it. Hospital under complete educational control is as necessary to a medical school as a laboratory of chemistry or pathology. So if you're going to have a medical school, you need to have a hospital so that you can have a teaching place for them. That makes sense, right? It makes sense that we should do that. In view of these facts, progress for the future would seem to require a very much smaller number of medical schools, better equipped and better conducted than our schools now, as a rule, and the needs of these public would be equally require that we have fewer physicians graduate each year. So this study basically says, look, we got too many schools. They're not well trained. They're just getting they don't stand up to the German model. They're just getting advertising to keep them going, and we need to do something about that. The development which is here suggested for medical education is conditioned largely upon three factors. First, upon the creation of a public opinion which shall discriminate between the ill-trained and the rightly trained physician. Here we go. This is something that's big. Upon the creation of public opinion. How are you going to create public opinion? Right? Which shall discriminate between the ill-trained and the rightly trained physicians. Well, who's going to make the decision between who's the ill-trained and who's the rightly trained? Right? Chiropractors have been fighting that since the beginning. Chiropractic started in 1895. And so the chiropractors in the early 1900s, they're the ones that got left out of this deal because, and then all of a sudden, what we did is we were going to create public opinion which shall discriminate between the ill-trained and the rightly trained. It wasn't just chiropractors either. Which will also insist upon the enactment of such laws as will require all practitioners of medicine, where they belong to one sect or another, to ground themselves in the fundamentals upon which medical science rests. The fundamentals based on Germany. The fundamentals based on the motherland that we've already decided is going to be the level to which we're going to set the stage, and we're gonna say that, hey, now that's what we're going to do that right there. Upon the universities and their attitude towards medical standards and medical support, and finally, upon the attitude of the members of the medical profession towards the standards of their own practice and upon their sense of honor with respect to their own profession. Fair enough. I think that's fair enough. You should hold me to a standard that I should be held as a doctor. I should have a standard. I'm not arguing that at all. But you can see some of the language, and this was signed by Harry S. Pritchett, April 16th, 1910. So here we go. Now, this is historical and in general, and it's discussing. This is the Flexner part of it, and he went in there and he talked about how many medical schools that we had, and how many medical schools that and how many medical doctors that were being kicked out. Between 1810 and 1840, 26 new medical schools sprang up. Between 1840 and 1876, 47 more. And the number actually surviving in 1876 has been since then much more than doubled. First and last, the United States and Canada have a little more than a century produced 457 medical schools, many of them short-lived and perhaps 50 stillborn. 155 survive today. And it goes in there and talks about the inequities and what's wrong with it, and there's some legitimate arguments that Dr. Flexner makes. There's some legitimate arguments that says, hey, we're not doing a very good job with this. Professor Paulson, describing in his book, here's another one. Professor Paulson, describing in his book on the German universities, the increased importance of the medical profession. Again, okay, we've already established. The reason that I'm so excited about this is because it shines the light. It shines the light on how we got to where we got today, because Dr. Flexner was enamored when he went around the world and studied all of the people, all of the different places around the world that had medicine, and Carnegie was founding all this. He was enamored by the Germans. He thought the Germans were the model that we should follow. He said, these are the guys that we should follow. They're the ones that have the scientific method. They're the ones that do the research. They're the ones that have the labs. They're the ones that use the Bunsen burners and the beakers and all that stuff. They're the ones that really know what they're doing when it comes to medicine right there. So why would he reference in his Flexner report Professor Paulson, describing in his book The German Universities, the increased importance of the medical profession, reports with astonishment that the number of physicians has increased with great rapidity, so that there's now in Germany one doctor for every 2,000 souls, and the large cities one for every 1,000. So we reference Germany. In Germany, there's one doctor for every 2,000 people. And in the big city, one doctor for every 100 people. In the United States, there's already, on the average, one doctor for every 568 persons. That in our large cities, there is frequently one doctor for every 400 or less, and that many small towns with less than 200 inhabitants each have 2 or 3 physicians apiece. Right? Yeah. But we're not doing it like Germany's doing it. We've got way too many people. They're not educated. We need to do better. We need to set our standards by these guys. We need to set our standards on the way that we're going to do medicine in the United States, because we're a century of reckless overproduction of cheap doctors has resulted in general overcrowding. We're overcrowding. We're kicking them out. The lowly people are kicking out the good ones. There's too much competition. This is not good for anybody. There's differences in the South. There's differences in the North. It's not a good thing, right? With the overproduction thus demonstrated, the commercial treatment of medical education is intimately connected. Low standards give the medical schools access to a large clientele open to successful exploitation by commercial methods. The crude boy or the jaded clerk who goes into medicine at this level has not been moved by a significant prompting from within. This is massive. He's saying that, hey, we got so many people wanting to go be doctors, and look, they're not doing it for good reasons. The crude boy or the jaded clerk who goes into medicine at this level has not been moved from a significant prompting from within, nor has he, as a rule, shown any forethought in the matter of making himself ready. He is more likely to have been caught drifting at a vacant moment by an alluring advertisement or announcement, quite commonly an exaggeration, not infrequently an outright misrepresentation. So Flexner's argument is that we've got too many medical schools that are luring people away from medicine, from their life, and pulling them into the medical schools. And these people aren't going there because they feel like they have a passion for medicine, and they don't have a passion for people, and they're not really wanting to get themselves educated. They may simply have been allured, drifting at a vacant moment by alluring advertisement or announcement, quite commonly an exaggeration, not infrequently an outright misrepresentation. I just couldn't imagine what he would think about today. It was like the deans of these institutions occasionally know more about modern advertising than about modern technical teaching. And it made me think about something, and so I looked it up. I looked up a couple of things, did you guys know that there's actually a medical advertising hall of fame? I'll show you this picture. See if I can see if I can just show you. I can't. This is the Medical Advertising Hall of Fame right here. Yeah, and they induct people every single year into the Medical Advertising Hall of Fame. Look at all those people in their suits. Look at all those people right there that get, and who are these people? Who are these people that get inducted into the Medical Advertising Hall of Fame? People that set up these big major advertising situations, right? Some of these names that are on here, that you should go look at that page. The Medical Advertising Hall of Fame. Friday night they're going to have a new induction, and they're going to put more people in there on Friday night, because they're going to and put those names in there. And I went and looked at some of them, and I went and looked and found a man that was put in there. Sander Flom. Sander Flom was the guy that was put into the Advertising Hall of Fame. Sandflaum. In his obituary, he died peacefully on December 11th, 2022 at the age of 85. He was a bunch of people. He went to the Ohio State University, graduating in 1958. Upon completing his military service, he earned an MBA degree from Fairleigh Dickinson University. Sanders served on the board of Ohio State University College of Arts and Sciences, Fisher College of Business, where he was also an executive in residence. He was a board member of the John Glenn Public Affairs, the James Cancer Center, blah, 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 right? All this stuff. He wasn't a doctor. He was a pharma marketing legend, is what he was. He was a pharma marketing legend. From graduating from the Ohio State University with a dual major in journalism and psychology, Flon spent 18 years at Leaderly Laboratories. During his Leaderly tenure, he launched or restaged 80 products and rose to the role of Director of Marketing and Head of Vaccines and RX products. In 88, he transitioned successfully to the agency of the Euro Becker, ultimately serving as its chairman and CEO. Under his leadership, the agency worked for 7 of the 10 biggest pharma companies. Yeah, I didn't have any idea that there was a pharma Hall of Fame. Advertising Hall of Fame. And in 1908 and 1909, Dr. Flexner says, hey, look, one of the problems that we have with medicine today is that there's too many advertisements. We got to cut some of this stuff out because some of these things are not infrequently, an outright misrepresentation. Yeah, so we went on, and I'm running out of time with this thing, but we went on and here's the reconstruction. Here's how we're going to do things. Here's how we're going to build medical schools. Here's the stuff that we're going to teach. The German Empire contains 84 cities whose population exceeds 50,000 each. Of its 22 medical schools, only 11 are to be found in them. The German Empire, again, what we did in the early 1900s is we got enamored with the Germans in the way that they do medicine. And Dr. Flexner came back and he reported to Andrew Carnegie. And all of a sudden, Andrew Carnegie started appointing Carnegie Foundation members as heads of medical schools. And they taught it that you had to follow the German method. You had to follow the method of the cocaine distribution, methamphetamine distribution, masters of later 1800s and 1900s. That's the model we followed. And then all of a sudden, I started thinking about, I started thinking about, you guys ever heard of George C. Nicopolis? Dr. Nick? Anybody out there know who Dr. Nick is? George Constantine Nicopolis, also known as Dr. Nick, was an American physician of Greek descent. He was best known as Elvis Presley's personal physician. Yes, just like Hitler had a personal physician that kept him high, gave him speed, gave him stuff. Elvis Presley ended up with the same model, right? Michael Jackson, you know who Conrad Murray is? He's Michael Jackson's personal medical doctor, right? Like he's the one that gave, when you're having a rough time, let's turn to a stimulant. Let's turn to a morphine. Let's turn to an opiate. Let's turn to something that takes our pain away from us when life gets tough. And what do we choose? What have we done in the United States today? We have built the model that is doing that it's by design. The way that we function in the world today, in the United States today, we are now the number one consumers of pharmaceuticals. Why? Because we learned from the best. We learned from the best. They were the number one consumers of pharmaceuticals, and now we're the number one pharmaceutical consumers, and there's nothing about that has anything to do with wellness. That is the story of how we got to where we are today. It's by design. Sorry I'm out of time. I hope that was beneficial. I hope you guys got something from that. And I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow night at 6. And you guys have a great evening.